Hey guys, tonight you find yourself just outside a medieval town as dusk sinks into the stones, your boots heavy with mud, your cloak damp at the hem, and the smell of river mist, horse breath, wet wool, and wood smoke folding together in the cold air. Above you, the gatehouse leans dark against a bruised winter sky, its torches waking one by one while smoke curls beneath the roof beams, like it has paid rent there for centuries. Straw lies trampled near the road. Bells murmur somewhere beyond the wall, and a tired mule beside you exhales as if medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. To be fair, you probably would not last a week out here, not with the cold stone, the thin blankets, the suspicious stew, and the general lack of anything resembling customer service. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the gate creaks open, you can comment where you are listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward as the last colour drains from the road. The town before you is not silent, though from a distance it seemed to sleep already. The wall is patched in places with newer stone, darker and rougher than the old blocks, and the ditch below holds thin water that reflects the torch flames in broken ribbons. Your boots make a soft sucking sound in the mud, a humble little music of travel, and the leather straps at your shoulder creak each time you shift your small bundle. The gatekeeper peers down first, then waves you through with the bored suspicion of a man who has seen enough strangers to know that most of them are cold, hungry, and carrying very little worth stealing. His fur-lined hood is patched at one ear. A lantern hangs from a hook beside him, throwing gold across the iron studs of the gate. Behind him, a boy no older than an apprentice drags a bar into place, ready to close the town against the night. The wood groans as if it remembers every winter that has ever pressed against it. You pass beneath the arch, and the sound changes at once. Outside, the road had been wide and wet, open to fields, crows, and far trees. Inside, everything gathers close. Houses lean over the lane, upper floors jutting as though they are trying to whisper across the street. Shutters clap softly. A woman pulls in a hanging cloth before the damp ruins it. Somewhere, a bucket knocks against a well curb. Somewhere else, a baby complains once, briefly, then is soothed into a sleepy grumble. The evening bell has already rung from the church tower, but its memory still trembles in the air. People here measure the day by bells, by market calls, by the baking of bread, by the opening and shutting of gates, by the church's patient insistence that time belongs to God and everyone else may borrow it in small, nervous pieces. No one can quite agree whether the bell keeps evil away or merely reminds honest folk to get indoors before dishonest folk feel inspired. Either way, when it rings after sunset, even the boldest voices lower. You move slowly along the lane, letting your eyes adjust to the mixture of torchlight and fading sky. Rushes have been swept from doorways into damp little heaps. Ash has been thrown over slick patches where feet might slide. A fishmonger's stall stands empty except for a scale or two shining like tiny moons on the boards. The smell of smoked fish lingers stubbornly, mingling with tallow smoke, dung, ale, onions, and the sharp green note of herbs hung above a nearby doorway. Someone has tied rowan twigs there with a red thread, a little charm against harm, sickness, bad luck, and possibly neighbours with opinions. Medieval medicine is broad in its ambitions. A dog begins following you near the corner where the lane bends toward the market cross. It is brown, long-nosed, and narrow as a broom handle, with the confident walk of a creature who has never paid rent and never intends to. It sniffs your boot, decides you're interesting but not immediately edible, and pads after you. Its claws tick faintly against the stones whenever the mud thins. That small sound, soft and steady, joins the others the creak of a swinging sign. The cough of a man behind a shutter, the distant clatter of a pot being set down too hard. These are the forgotten sounds of the town at the edge of the midnight, though midnight itself still lies ahead, folded in the dark like a letter not yet opened. They are not grand sounds. No trumpet calls you to glory. No minstrel appears, unless one counts the man muttering into his beard beside a doorway, which seems unfair to minstrels everywhere. Instead, there is the humble orchestra of ordinary survival bolts drawn across doors, chickens fussing in their baskets, a lad calling good night to someone across an alley, the wet slap of a broom pushing filth toward the gutter. You pause beneath the sign of an inn, where a painted moon and cup swing from a chain. The sign gives one tired squeal, then another, as the wind fingers it. Above the door, a small niche holds a saint no larger than your hand, his painted face worn nearly blank by rain and candle soot. Some swear that if a traveller touches the base of the niche before sleeping, he dreams of the road ahead. Others say it only leaves soot on the fingers. You consider both possibilities equally useful. Inside the town, the cold feels different. The walls hold it in, pressing it through stone and timber. Yet there is comfort too, the glow beneath doors, the thick scent of pottage simmering somewhere, the sigh of a horse in a stable yard, the murmur of people close enough to be heard but not understood. You hear a latch lift, then fall. You hear a woman laugh once, low and tired. You hear the church bell rope creak faintly in the tower, though the bell does not ring. At the far end of the lane, the gate begins to close. The great bar thuds into its sockets with a sound that settles deep in your ribs. Outside are fields, forest tracks, roadside shrines, and whatever moves after dark beyond the hedges. Inside are rules, smells, fleas, prayers, gossip, and at least the illusion that walls know what they're doing. The dog sits beside your boot and scratches one ear. You draw your cloak closer and look back at the gatehouse. Torchlight trembles along the stones. Above, a watchman leans on his spear, already half-shaped by shadow. The town exhales around you, not asleep, not awake, but entering that older hour when every small sound matters. And you, damp, tired, and quietly grateful for any roof that does not leak directly onto your face, step deeper into the lane as the first true night sounds begin to gather. You follow the innkeeper through the low doorway and duck beneath a beam darkened by so many years of smoke that it seems less like wood than a piece of night nailed overhead. Warmth greets you, though it is a shy warmth, the sort that has to fight its way through drafts, damp cloaks, and a room full of people pretending not to notice how cold their feet are. The brown dog slips in behind you, as if he has always belonged here, which, judging by the way no one objects, he probably has. The hall is long and narrow, with stone underfoot and soot-black rafters above. A fire burns at one end, low but steady, its embers breathing orange beneath a stack of split logs. Servants move across the floor with baskets of fresh rushes, scattering them in loose green-brown layers over the old straw. The smell rises at once: sweet grass, damp earth, spilled ale, wood smoke, old boots, and the faint sour memory of yesterday's supper in a fine lord's hall. The rushes might be mixed with lavender, meadow sweet, or rosemary to sweeten the air. Here, the herbs are fewer, the floor is humbler, and the rushes perform the noble medieval task of making dirt feel more organised. You step carefully, feeling the stems bend beneath your soles. Somewhere near the wall, a maid kneels and pushes aside the older, darker rushes with a wooden rake, gathering crumbs, bones, ash, and whatever mysteries have settled there since morning. No one can quite agree whether old rushes protect a house by holding its familiar smells, or whether they simply hide things better left unfound. Either way, when she lifts a clump near the corner, the dog sneezes once and looks personally betrayed. A trestle table stands along the middle of the room, its boards scrubbed pale in places and stained dark in others. Benches sit on either side. Near the fire, a few travellers lean over bowls of pottage, thick with peas, onions, oats, and perhaps a little bacon if fortune has been unusually generous. A round loaf of coarse bread lies cut into pieces beside a wooden trencher. Someone has left a heel of cheese under a cloth, and the dog has already noticed with the focus of a scholar studying sacred scripture. The innkeeper points you toward a place near the wall, not too close to the fire, but close enough that your damp cloak may consider becoming merely unpleasant rather than fully miserable. You sit, and your knees give a quiet complaint. The bench is hard, polished by generations of tired bodies. Above you, a beeswax candle stands in an iron holder fixed to the wall. It burns cleaner than tallow, with a soft golden light and a faint honeyed scent. And this alone makes the corner feel almost gentle. Tallow candles smoke more and smell of rendered fat, which is a useful reminder that even medieval lighting has opinions. You stretch your hands toward the warmth that reaches this far from the hearth. Around you, the hall speaks in small sounds. A spoon knocks against a wooden bowl. A child yawns behind a hanging cloth that separates some sleeping corner from the common room. A man coughs into his sleeve, then mutters a prayer to Saint Blaise, whose help is often sought for throats. The wind presses at the shutters with careful fingers. Somewhere up in the rafters, a beam gives a slow, thoughtful creak. At once, an old woman by the fire lifts her eyes. You notice this because two other people lift theirs too. The sound itself is ordinary enough. Timber swells and shrinks with weather, and this hall has carried too many winters to remain polite about it. Yet the old woman touches the little pouch at her neck, a charm sewn with bits of thread, and maybe a scrap of written prayer. Some swear that a creak above the hearth means a visitor will arrive by dawn. Others say a creak above the door warns of a quarrel. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, perhaps because timber is generous and creaks often enough to support every theory. The innkeeper, seeing the glance, snorts softly. He sets a cup of small ale before you, thin and cloudy, safer than much water, and mild enough that even a monk could object only out of habit. Old beams talk, he says, as if this explains everything. Then he moves away before anyone can ask whether they ever say anything useful, like where he keeps the better cheese. You drink. The ale is cool, faintly sour, and comforting in the way of things that belong exactly to their place. Your throat warms, your shoulders sink, your cloak begins steaming faintly at the edges. The dog lies under the bench, chin on paws, still watching the cheese with religious devotion. Servants continue their work around the room. One replaces a cracked clay cup, another trims the candle wick with small iron snuffers. A boy brings in more wood, each log knocking against the next in his arms. He stacks them beside the hearth, then pauses to rub his cold fingers together. His sleeves are rolled too short for the weather, and a bit of blue thread is tied around his wrist. You have seen such threads before, worn against sprains, envy, fever, bad dreams. Or simply because someone's grandmother insisted. Even now, it is hard to tell whether charms comfort the body, the mind, or the grandmother. In a town like this, all three may matter. The hall settles by degrees, voices lower. The bright talk of arrival fades into the softer rhythm of people preparing to endure the night. A wool blanket is shaken out in the corner. A pilgrim with a pewter badge sewn to his hat checks the cord of his purse twice before tucking it beneath his belt. A broad-shouldered carter removes one boot, examines his sock with sorrow, and decides the sock has lost a battle no bard will sing about. He sighs, pulls the boot back on, and takes another drink. You lean your head against the wall, feeling the cold of stone through the plaster. The beeswax candle beside you flickers whenever the door opens. Each time, a thin blade of night slides in, carrying the smell of mud, rain, and the closed town beyond. Then the door shuts, the latch falls, and the hall gathers itself again. Above, the rafters creak once more. This time, no one speaks. The sound travels slowly through the beams, a sleepy wooden complaint. The dog opens one eye. The candle flame bends, straightens, and leaves a faint thread of smoke curling upward. You listen with the others, not because you truly believe the house is warning you, but because night makes listeners of everyone. In daylight, a creak is only a creak. After the gate has closed and the bells have faded, it becomes a message, or a memory, or the house turning in its sleep. You tuck your bundle beneath your arm and let the room blur softly around you. There is no silence here. Only layers rushes shifting under servant feet, blankets rustling, ale being swallowed, Embers settling, the wind whirring at shutters, a sleeper murmuring through a dream. These are not the grand sounds people remember when they speak of castles and kings. These are the sounds that keep a town alive in the dark, small and patient as breath. And as the dog inches closer beneath your bench, pretending not to be near your bread, you close your cold fingers around the cup and listen while the hall, with all its beams, candles, rushes, and superstitions, carries you gently deeper into the night. The hall does not so much quiet as loosen, like a knot in wet cord. After the rushes are spread and the first edge of warmth has crept into your cloak, the room changes its shape around you. Those who mean to sleep draw closer to walls and corners, pulling wool blankets over their shoulders, while those not yet ready to surrender to the night drift toward the hearth and the darker tables near the ale barrels. You follow the low murmur, cup in hand. The brown dog's still beneath your bench until he realizes movement may mean crumbs, at which point loyalty becomes immediate and profound. Near the back of the inn, past a hanging cloth stiff with smoke, the alehouse part of the house gathers around a second hearth. It is smaller, warmer, and more secretive than the common hall, with rafters so black that even candlelight seems to hesitate before touching them. Tankards stand in uneven rows, wooden bowls sit upside down to dry. A board on 2 barrels serves as a table for men who look as if they have been arguing about the same subject since Candlemas, and intend to continue until Judgment Day, or at least until the ale runs out. You take a place along the wall, where a narrow bench lets you rest your back against plaster, warmed faintly by the room. The air is thick with smoke, malt, wet leather, onions, and the salt smell of smoked fish. On the table before you lies a trencher of stale bread darkened by gravy, a few onion skins, a knife with a bone handle, and 3 dice carved from some small animal's knucklebone. The dice click softly as a carter rolls them in a cupped hand. He has one sleeve patched in red. A beard full of crumbs, and the expression of a man certain that luck has mistaken him for someone wealthier. Dice are frowned upon by many priests, naturally, because priests have a professional duty to frown at anything that causes shouting, debt, or cheerful cheating. Yet here they are, clicking over the boards, while the players mutter charms under their breath. One man blows on the dice before throwing, another taps the table twice with his left hand, then crosses himself quickly, as if heaven might not notice the order of operations. No one can quite agree whether luck listens better to prayers, curses, or warm breath. But the dice seem deeply unimpressed by all 3. A woman with sleeves rolled to the elbow moves between the tables, refilling cups from a small pitcher. Her keys hang from her belt, iron and brass knocking softly against one another. Keys are important things here, not merely for locks, but for status, trust, and the comforting feeling that some parts of life may still be shut away from thieves, rats, and cousins. She keeps the buttery key separate beneath her apron, you notice, and the pantry key tied with blue cord. Some swear that iron keys laid beneath a pillow keep nightmares from sitting on the sleeper's chest. Others say it is only uncomfortable enough to wake you before the nightmare grows ambitious. The ale is weak but welcome. Small ale belongs to daily life as surely as bread and smoke. It fills cups at breakfast, supper, and every hour when water looks doubtful, which in a town gutter is most hours. A man near the hearth dips coarse bread into his bowl of pottage and chews slowly, eyes half closed. Beside him, a young apprentice eats from a wooden spoon and tries not to fall asleep with his forehead over the steam. His master nudges him awake whenever his chin sinks too low, less out of kindness than a practical desire not to lose an apprentice face first into peas. The talk is low, but it travels. Gossip is a kind of night wind indoors. You hear of a missing hen, a shoemaker's debt, a pilgrim who claimed to have seen a saint's finger bone glow in the rain, and a widow who refuses to sell her late husband's cloak because she says it still turns toward the door at night. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the cloak moves by grief, draught, or poor stitching. Around here, all 3 are considered plausible, though draught is the most reliable supernatural force in winter. One man speaks of the market tolls being raised, another complains that the baker's loaves have grown lighter, though the baker's wife insists the flour is to blame and not her husband's thumb on the scales. A third says the town reeve has counted every cart entering the gate this week, which cannot mean anything good. The words drift over you like smoke reeve, toll, guild, tithe, rent, oath, measure, medieval life. You begin to understand is not only bells and castles. It is also everyone keeping track of who owes whom 3 pennies, half a sack of barley, or an apology nobody expects to receive. Then, softly at first, someone begins to sing. It is not a grand song. No harp accompanies it. No shining knight weeps into his embroidered sleeve. It is a sleepy working song about a miller, a goose, and a wife cleverer than both, sung by a man whose voice has seen better years and perhaps better teeth. A few others join the refrain, though not always at the same time. The tune wanders, returns, forgets itself, then finds its way again. You listen, warmed by the ale, while the dog settles heavily against your boot. His body gives off a mild, earthy heat, like a small hearth with opinions about cheese. The innkeeper does not sing, but he taps one finger against a cup in time with the tune. The candle flames tremble. A hanging bunch of dried herbs turns slowly above the hearth rosemary, sage, yarrow, and perhaps a sprig of rue. People hang such herbs for scent, for cooking, for healing, and for discouraging all manner of unseen nuisances. Some swear that yarrow under the pillow brings dreams of one's future spouse. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this is romance, superstition, or warning about the risks of sleeping too near medicinal plants. Outside, somewhere in the lane, a staff strikes stone. The room notices, though no one stops at once. The dice pause in a man's hand. The song thins. The woman with the keys turns her head toward the shutter. Again comes the sound tap. Pause. Tap. Then a lantern glow slips briefly through the crack beside the door, and a voice calls the hour in the street, roughened by cold. The night watch passes slowly, making its official music staff, bell, boot, breath, lantern ring, and the small scrape of authority walking through mud. Curfew is not a single moment here, but a settling of permissions. Fires are covered, doors barred, strangers noticed, quarrels discouraged before they become interesting. The watchman calls for good folk to keep their peace and their embers safe. Someone near the dice mutters that his embers are safer than his coins. Another tells him the coins are gone because he gambles like a blinded goat, which is rude but appears supported by evidence. The watchman's steps fade. Only then does the room exhale, the dice roll again, quieter now. The song returns, softer, as if sung partly for the sleeping house. You feel the hour deepen around you. The alehouse does not fight the night, it tucks itself inside it. Every sound seems wrapped in cloth, the cup set down carefully. The shuffle of feet through rushes, the crackle of covered coals, the murmur of gossip becoming less certain and more dreamlike. You finish your cup slowly. Beyond the wall, the town lies under roofs slick with mist. Somewhere a shutter knocks, somewhere a horse shifts in straw. Somewhere the bell rope waits in the church tower, hanging still in the dark until the next appointed hour. The dog sighs against your boot, having accepted that no cheese will be offered by miracle alone. You rise with the others when the innkeeper begins covering the fire. The night watch has passed, but its sounds remain in your ear, tapping lightly like a staff on stone, and as you turn back toward the common hall, stepping through smoke and low candlelight, you carry with you the alehouse murmurs after curfew dice, song, gossip, breath, and the soft stubborn proof that even at midnight a town does not sleep all at once. You leave the alehouse warmth by degrees, not all at once, because warmth clings to a person in a place like this the way burrs cling to wool. First your fingers remember the cup, then your shoulders remember the hearth, then your feet complain as the chill of the passage finds them again through damp leather. The innkeeper lowers the hanging cloth behind you, and the murmurs of dice, song, and sleepy argument blur into a muffled hum, as if the room has been wrapped in a blanket. Near the outer door, the beeswax candle in its iron holder is burned lower. A golden lip of melted wax leans over one side, frozen in the act of falling. You pause beside it while the innkeeper lifts the latch and peers into the lane. The brown dog slips ahead, nose first, with the confidence of one who believes the whole town has been built for his inspection. A narrow ribbon of cold enters under the door, carrying rain, mud, smoke, and that faint sour smell of gutters resting badly after a long day. The door opens. Night receives you softly. The town lane is darker now, though not empty. Above, the roofs meet in crooked angles, and the strip of sky between them is clouded, moonless, and low. Water drips from eaves into barrels with patient little plunks. Somewhere behind a shutter, a person coughs twice, then spits into rushes or a bowl, and mutters a prayer so tired it barely has bones. The watchman's lantern glows farther down the lane, a small swinging star close to the earth. You step after it. The watchman moves slowly because his task is not to hurry. He carries a staff in one hand, a horn lantern in the other, its thin scraped panels glowing amber around the candle within. A short bell hangs from his belt. At each corner he stops, lifts the bell, and gives it a careful shake, not a grand ringing, but a rough, hand-sized clamour that breaks against stone, door, shutter, and sleeping ear. Then he calls the hour in a voice that seems made of cold water and old bread. "Good folk, keep your fires covered, keep your doors barred, pray for the souls abroad this night." His words drift upward and vanish into the rafters of the street. You walk a few paces behind him, permitted by a nod rather than an invitation. The dog trots between you, tail low, occasionally pausing to investigate doorposts with the seriousness of a town official. The watchman wears a patched cloak stiffened by drizzle. Beneath it, you see the dull shine of a leather jack, a short knife, a ring of iron keys, and a little wooden rattle tucked at his belt. Some towns use rattles to raise alarm, because they carry sharply through narrow streets. Others trust bells. No one can quite agree whether a bell frightens thieves more than it annoys honest sleepers, but the watchman appears committed to testing both possibilities. You pass a row of shops with their front boards closed and barred. By day, these boards fold down into counters where cloth, knives, ribbons, onions, candles, and fish are laid out under the eyes of buyers who pinch everything before paying for anything. Now the boards are upright, locked tight with wooden pegs and iron hasps. Behind one shutter, you hear the scrape of a bolt being checked again. Behind another, the small metallic slide of coins being hidden in a chest. People here trust God. Saints, iron locks, and then, if time permits, one another. The watchman pauses beside a doorway marked with chalk. 3 crosses, freshly drawn. He lifts his lantern, studies them, and sniffs. The marks might be a blessing for the household, a warning of sickness, or a charm left after a priest's visit. Even now, it is hard to tell whether people mark doors more for heaven to notice or for neighbours to keep their distance. A sprig of evergreen hangs from the latch, bound with thread. The dog sniffs it, sneezes, and decides the matter is beneath him. Farther on, an alley opens to your left, narrow as a knife cut between houses. The watchman turns into it, and you follow with one shoulder brushing damp plaster. Here the town changes its voice again. The wide lane gave you drips, shutters, and distant bells. The alley gives you whispers mice in straw, the slow leak of a roof, a sleeping man muttering through a wall, the soft scratch of rats behind stacked firewood. You hear someone's loom creak faintly indoors. Though no one should be weaving at this hour, perhaps a treadle settles by itself. Perhaps someone works late by hidden candle to finish cloth owed at market. Some swear that unfinished weaving invites night spirits to tangle the thread before dawn. Others say tired weavers blame spirits because spirits do not argue back. The watchman taps his staff against the stones once at a corner, twice before a dark yard, 3 times beneath a hanging sign shaped like a boot. It is a code of habit more than law, a way of telling the town he has passed. He is awake, he has eyes, He has not fallen asleep against a wall like his cousin apparently did one winter and never heard the end of it. From far away. Another answer comes. Tap. Pause. Tap. A second watchman on another street. The sounds meet in the dark like two men nodding without seeing each other. You pass the churchyard wall. Here the air cools sharply. Grave markers lean beneath yew branches, and the church tower rises black against the cloud. From within comes the faintest creak of rope, stirred by wind, though the bell stays silent. People say bells can drive off storms, plague airs, wandering souls, and sometimes bad thoughts, if rung with enough faith and sufficient arm strength. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether bells command the darkness or simply remind people that others are awake in it too. Tonight, you find the second answer kinder. The watchman lifts his lantern toward a shutter where light leaks thin as thread. He knocks with his staff. The light disappears, a bolt slides, no words pass between them. Rules have their own language after midnight. Fire must be banked, candles must be watched. A single fallen spark can take a house, then a street, then half a town before the bucket line forms in panic. The watchman's nightly call is not theatre. It is memory made practical, spoken into every lane so no one forgets how hungry flame can be. You draw your cloak tighter. Wet wool scratches your neck. Your breath clouds faintly before you. The dog has mud up both legs and looks pleased with himself. At the next corner, the watchman lets you hold the lantern while he adjusts the strap at his wrist. The handle is warm where his fingers have been. Inside, the candle gutters, recovers, and paints your knuckles gold. For a moment, the town seems to gather inside that small light oak doors, iron keys, sleeping faces, hidden coins, old rushes, covered embers, and all the tiny sounds people make while trying to be safe. Then he takes the lantern back and moves on. You follow until the lane widens near a yard smelling of hay and horses, though you do not enter it yet. The watchman's bell gives one more modest clatter. His staff meets stone. His voice rolls softly ahead, asking good folk to sleep, to pray, to guard their fires, to trust the walls for a little longer. And behind him, with cold hands tucked beneath your cloak and the dog's claws ticking beside you, you listen to the town answer in bolts, coughs, drips, creaks, and breathing, all of it low, ordinary, and strangely comforting beneath the midnight sky. The yard opens to your right through a sagging timber gate, and the smell reaches you before the sight does hay, horse sweat, damp leather, old straw, manure, cold iron, and the deep animal warmth that seems almost generous after the wet lanes. The watchman keeps walking, his lantern bobbing away toward another corner, but you slow at the stable entrance as if the darkness inside has lifted one finger and beckoned you closer. The brown dog slips through first, of course, because dogs consider all thresholds a personal invitation. You step beneath the low lintel and into a place where the night breathes. The stable is not silent. It's full of small, living sounds, softer than speech but steadier. Horses shift their weight in the stalls, hooves pressing into straw with dry, muffled crunches. A mule blows air through its nose, long and offended, as if still composing a complaint about the road. Leather tack hangs from wooden pegs and creaks whenever the draught stirs it. Somewhere, a chain clinks once against a ring. Rain ticks on the roof. Finding one weak place above a beam and dripping into a bucket below with a hollow, patient note. A stable boy sleeps near the feed chest, wrapped in a wool cloak with one arm flung over his face. He cannot be more than 12 or 13, though in a town like this, childhood is less a protected season than a brief arrangement before work finds you. Beside him lies a fork for hay, a wooden comb for currying, and a little twist of dried mugwort tied to the post. Some swear mugwort keeps weariness from the limbs and bad dreams from the head. Others say stable boys use it because old grooms tell them to, and old grooms speak with the authority of men who have been kicked by horses and survived. You stand still, letting your eyes adjust. Each stall holds its own shadow and warmth. One horse, a broad brown gelding with a pale stripe down his face, turns his head toward you and exhales. His breath steams in the chill air, silver in the faint lantern glow leaking from the yard. He chews slowly, the soft grind of teeth working hay into comfort. Another stamps once, then settles. The dog sniffs a hoofprint, decides it contains history, and sneezes into the straw. Along the far wall stand 2 carts under a lean-to roof. Their wheels are tall, iron-rimmed, and dark with mud. One cart is loaded with sacks, covered in canvas. The other sits crooked, its left wheel propped awkwardly on a stone. You remember the carter in the alehouse, his sorrowful sock and his poor luck with dice, and you begin to suspect this wheel belongs to him. A spoke has cracked near the hub, and the rim leans as if trying to leave the rest of the cart quietly, without causing a scene. You move closer. The broken wheel gives a soft groan when the wind pushes the canvas. It is not a dramatic sound, not the howl of danger or doom, only the tired complaint of the wood under strain. Yet after midnight, even a wheel can sound like a warning. No one can quite agree whether a cracked cart wheel should be mended at once, left until daylight, or touched with an iron nail and a short prayer to keep bad travel away. Travellers are practical people. But practicality in the Middle Ages often includes prayer, spit, and hitting the object twice to see if it improves. A small bundle hangs from the cart shaft, a strip of cloth, a sprig of thorn, and what may be a bent coin tied together with red thread, a road charm. You have seen such things at wagon poles, pack saddles, and pilgrim staffs, meant to guard against broken axles, thieves, bogs, fever, wolves, and unfair weather, which is an ambitious list for a few scraps of thread. Some swear a coin bent before a saint's image may carry the saint's attention along the road, even now. It is hard to tell whether saints appreciate being consulted about wheel maintenance, but travellers rarely hesitate to ask. The stable boy stirs, lowers his arm, and blinks at you without surprise. Perhaps strangers in stables are common. Perhaps he's too sleepy to be alarmed. He pushes himself upright, hair flattened on one side, and scratches at his cheek. "Wheel's gone," he murmurs. "So it seems," you say softly. Master says it cracked because the carter crossed the old ford after dark. This is said with the calm certainty of someone repeating a better story than the truth. The truth is likely mud, weight, and bad roads. But the old ford has a reputation. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a pale lady stands there on moonless nights, whether the stones shift under unlucky wheels, or whether carters invent pale ladies whenever they overload their carts and regret the physics of it later. Still, the boy glances toward the yard after speaking, as though the ford might have ears. He rises, takes a pinch of oats from the feed chest, and offers it to the brown gelding. The horse lips it from his palm with great delicacy. In the stall beside them, a smaller horse nudges the door bolt with its nose, producing a little metallic tap. The boy pushes it back. "Clever one," he says. "Too clever." It is a common complaint in stables, said of animals, apprentices, wives, husbands, and nearly anyone who causes extra work. He checks the latch, runs his fingers down the rope, then lifts a folded cloth from a peg and rubs condensation from a saddle. Tack must be kept dry if it can be, oiled when possible, patched whenever necessary. A cracked strap at the wrong moment can ruin a journey, or at least make it more memorable than anyone requested. You help him lift a loose plank from beneath the cart and wedge it under the axle. The wood is cold and damp under your fingers. The wheel groans again, lower this time, then settles. The boy nods as if this is a victory large enough for midnight. Your hands smell of wet oak and iron. Outside, the watchman's bell sounds faintly from another street. In the stable, the horses answer not with fear but with shifting hooves and slow breath. Animals know the town's hours differently from people. They know feeding, harness, grooming, road, rest. They know the tone of a hand before it touches them. They know storms before shutters do. Some swear horses can see what humans cannot, especially at crossroads, graveyards, and water crossings. You look at the brown gelding's dark eye, glossy and calm in the stable gloom, and you decide not to ask what he has seen. The dog circles twice in the straw and lies down near the broken cartwheel, as if claiming responsibility for repairs. His tail thumps once. The stable boy lowers himself back into his cloak but does not fully sleep. He watches the door, then the wheel, then the horses, keeping the loose, stubborn vigilance of someone used to waking at every sound. You stand a little longer, listening. The town beyond remains present, but softened rain in the yard, distant staff on stone, a shutter knocked by wind, a bell memory fading among roofs. Here inside, the deeper noises hold you still, the breath of horses, the creak of leather, the rustle of hay, the bucket's slow drip, the faint complaint of the damaged wheel. It seems a small trouble, a cracked spoke in a midnight stable, yet small troubles travel well. By morning, the carter will need help. The market may wait on his sacks, the watchman may mention the ford, the suspicious old woman by the fire may declare she heard the rafter warn of it, and the dog, somehow, will be present for all of this while contributing nothing but confidence. You draw your cloak around you and step back toward the yard. Behind you, the horses breathe clouds into the dark. The wheel settles once more with a wooden sigh, and you carry that sound with you as you leave the stable, a quiet promise that the night has not finished speaking yet. You leave the stable with the smell of hay still clinging to your sleeves and the faint ache of cold wood lingering in your fingers. Behind you, the broken cartwheel settles into its wedge with one last sleepy creak, and the stable boy lowers himself into his cloak again, though you suspect he will wake at every hoof shift until dawn. The brown dog follows you from the straw, shakes himself once in the yard, and trots ahead as if he's been appointed guide by some ancient municipal office, devoted entirely to wandering. The rain has thinned into mist. It beads along the edges of shutters and gathers on the ropes that hold shop signs over the lane. The watchman's bell is farther away now, only a small dull clatter travelling between houses. You turn toward the heart of town, where the road widens and the stones grow flatter from generations of carts, boots, hooves, and bargaining feet. Even in darkness, your body senses the space before your eyes fully see it. The houses draw back. The air opens. The muddy lane becomes the market square. By day, this place must be all elbows and voices. You can almost hear it still. Hidden under the midnight hush, women testing cloth between finger and thumb, fishwives calling prices with the confidence of queens, apprentices running errands badly, geese objecting to everything, and merchants swearing their measures are honest with a passion that suggests the opposite may occasionally occur. Now the stalls sleep beneath sagging canvas. Ropes creak softly, boards rest folded. Baskets are stacked upside down, their wicker dark with damp. The market cross stands in the middle, pale where moonlight finds it through the clouds, its stone steps slick and worn shallow in the centre. You walk toward it slowly. At the base of the cross sit the toll stones, squat and patient, used for weighing, measuring, announcing, judging, and reminding everyone that even onions may become a matter of law. Near them stands an iron ring set into stone, where pack animals are tied during market hours. A scrap of rope still hangs there, frayed at the end. Beside it, the dog sniffs with professional interest, then looks disappointed, as if the entire commercial system has failed to leave him anything edible. A canvas awning flaps once and then falls still. From beneath it comes the dry whisper of straw packing around clay pots. Another stall smells faintly of apples, though the baskets are gone. A third holds the ghost of wool lanolin, damp fleece, dye, and the sour scent of cloth not quite dry. You pass a table where a butcher's hooks hang empty, black little curves against the night. There is no blood, no drama, only the scrubbed boards, the cooling air, and the stubborn smell of salt used to keep meat longer than nature would kindly allow. No one can quite agree whether an empty market square is peaceful or uneasy. By day, it belongs to noise and trade. By night, it seems to remember every bargain, every lie, every oath sworn over a measure of grain. Some swear that if a merchant cheats too often, his own weights grow heavier in the dark and drag his soul downward while he sleeps. Others say this story was invented by honest merchants, a group whose size depends greatly on whom you ask. You rest one hand on the market cross. The stone is cold, damp, and slightly rough beneath your palm. Pilgrims touch crosses when passing through towns, asking for safe roads, dry feet, and bread that does not crack a tooth. Traders touch them before opening stalls, asking for fair profit, though fair profit, like fair weather, is a phrase with many interpretations. In a little hollow in the stone, someone has left a pin, bent nearly double. Perhaps it is an offering. Perhaps a woman placed it here while praying for a child's fever to break. Perhaps it fell from a cloak and acquired holiness by accident, which is not the worst path to holiness in the Middle Ages. The dog gives a soft bark. Across the square, another dog emerges from beneath a cart cover. This one is grey-muzzled, rounder, and clearly older in both body and opinions. It pauses, sees your companion, and stands very still. Your dog stands still too. For a long moment, the two of them conduct some silent counsel of their species. Then the older dog turns away with dignity, noses under a shuttered bread stall, and finds something too small for you to identify, but apparently large enough for triumph. Your dog watches this theft with pain. A shutter opens suddenly above the square. A man's face appears in the darkness, pale beneath a sleeping cap. He looks down, sees you, sees the dogs, sees nothing worth staying awake for, and pulls the shutter closed again. The wooden panel knocks once, then twice, before settling. Inside that house, someone whispers. A child coughs. A bed rope creaks under shifting weight. These sounds fall into the square and disappear among the stalls. You move around the cross, listening. There is the drip from canvas corners, the faint scrape of a sign turning in the mist, the soft patter of rat feet somewhere behind barrels, the distant river knocking at its posts beyond the lower lane. The market square gathers these sounds and holds them in a shallow bowl of stone and timber. Near one stall, you find a merchant's counting board forgotten under a cloth, its lines carved into wood, a few small counters tucked into a corner. Such boards help reckon debts, tolls, and sales, especially when numbers grow slippery after ale or argument. You do not touch it. People may forgive a traveller for muddy boots, but a stranger meddling with a counting board at midnight could become the sort of tale that ends badly in a manor court. Medieval towns are full of laws, and many of them appear only after you have broken one. A gust of wind moves through. The canvas awnings lift together with a soft inhaling sound. For a breath. It seems as though the whole market is about to wake. The wool stall sighs. The potter's straw shifts. A hanging scale taps against its hook. The toll stones gleam darkly with mist. Then everything falls still again. Even now, it's hard to tell whether the square feels empty because people have gone, or crowded because their day remains behind them. You picture the carter's broken wheel and wonder which sacks wait in the stable yard. Salt, barley, dyed cloth. A load delayed by one cracked spoke can trouble many hands by morning. A baker may lack grain, a cook may lack onions, a merchant may lack patience, which is already a scarce commodity in trade. The night is quiet, yes, but it is not idle. It is holding all the unfinished business of daylight. The church bell gives a low note, not a full ringing, but a single testing sound from the tower, perhaps wind moving the tongue, perhaps a monk awake too early, perhaps simply old metal remembering its duty. The note crosses the roofs and fades over the square. Your dog lowers his head. The older dog vanishes under a stall. You stand by the market cross until your hands grow colder than the stone. Then you step away, leaving the pin in its hollow, the toll stones in their silence, and the canvas stalls to dream of onions, wool, fish, bread, and coins. Behind you, the square remains open to the mist, filled with all the small sounds people forget to remember: ropes creaking, baskets settling, dogs prowling, shutters breathing, and the soft afterlife of bargains made before sunset. Ahead, above the roofs, you hear bells again, clearer now, drifting from the monastery on the rise beyond the town wall. They call into the wet darkness, slow and solemn, and you turn toward them as the dog pads at your heel, carrying the market's quiet with you into the next lane. The bells draw you upward. They do not ring quickly, nor brightly, nor with any wish to entertain. They sound as if someone has lowered bronze into the darkness and let it breathe. Each note rolls over the roofs, slides along wet thatch, touches the market cross behind you, and moves on through the crooked lanes where shutters sleep and gutters whisper. You follow that sound away from the square, the brown dog padding close enough now that his shoulder brushes your leg whenever the lane narrows. Perhaps he's adopted you. Perhaps he's adopted the idea that travellers eventually drop bread. No one can quite agree where affection ends and strategy begins. The road rises toward the monastery at the edge of town. It is not far, but every upward step reminds you of the mud in your boots and the damp wool dragging at your knees. The houses thin as you climb. Garden walls replace shop fronts. Bare winter herbs lean from beds behind wattle fences sage, rue, rosemary, and a few stubborn leaves of parsley blackened at the tips by frost. A little shrine stands in a niche set into a wall, its candle blown out, its saint's face streaked with rain. Someone has tucked a scrap of cloth beneath the stone base, perhaps from a sick child's sleeve, perhaps from a pilgrim's cloak, left there in hope that holiness might travel through fabric when medicine has run out of better ideas. The monastery gate appears through the mist, lower and plainer than the town gate, yet somehow sterner. Its arch is built of pale stone, damp at the seams, with a wooden door banded in iron. Above it, a small bell hangs beneath a tiled roof. Rain taps those tiles in a steady, careful rhythm, softer than the great bells but nearer, like fingers drumming on a table while someone decides whether to let you in. You lift the iron ring and knock. The sound is heavier than you expect. It passes through the door and vanishes into the monastery yard. For a while, nothing happens. Rain gathers at your hood and slides down beside your cheek. The dog sits neatly at your side, looking more respectable than he has at any previous moment, as if he often visits religious houses after midnight and can provide references if required. At last, a shutter opens in the gatehouse. A monk peers out, his face narrow in the lantern glow. His hood is pulled low, and his eyes have the particular brightness of someone woken from sleep and determined to blame the nearest available sinner. He asks your business. You tell him you seek shelter until dawn, that you have come from the town, that the inn is crowded, that the bells have guided you. You do not mention the alehouse dice, the market dogs, or the cracked wheel charm, because one must introduce oneself gradually to holy men. He studies you. Then he studies the dog. The dog is not a pilgrim, he says. The dog wags his tail once, gently, as if willing to consider vows. You offer that he is quiet. Mostly. This is generous but not entirely false. The monk sighs with deep suspicion. Monasteries have rules about guests, animals, women, merchants, noise, fire, food, sleep, and probably the moral character of muddy boots. Still, Christian duty has a way of opening doors even when the doorkeeper's expression would rather bolt them shut. The monk disappears, a bar lifts, hinges groan. The door opens just wide enough for a person, a small bundle, and one apparently controversial dog. You step inside. The yard beyond is washed in rain and shadow. Low buildings stand around it: guest house, chapel, storehouse, kitchen, stable, and the covered walk leading toward the cloister. Their roofs shine dark under the wet. A gutter spills steadily into a stone trough. Somewhere behind an oak door, sandals scrape on the floor. Somewhere else, a monk coughs, then clears his throat with the solemnity of a man preparing to chant before his soul has properly returned from sleep. The great bell sounds again from the church tower. This time you feel it through the soles of your feet. The deep hour is being marked, one of the night offices when monks rise to pray while the town dreams, snores, mutters, freezes, or pretends not to hear mice. People say monasteries keep the world stitched together by prayer, bell after bell, psalm after psalm, while ordinary folk sleep through the difficult parts. Some swear that if the night offices ever cease, dawn itself will hesitate. Others say dawn is less delicate than that. But no one wishes to test it. The suspicious monk leads you toward the guest house. His lantern swings at his side, throwing brief gold over puddles, thresholds, and stone steps worn smooth by many feet. A ring of keys hangs from his belt, and they strike softly as he walks. They sound different from the innkeeper's keys, less practical, more severe, as if each one opens not merely a door but an obligation. At one doorway, he pauses, turns, and points with 2 fingers toward a small chamber near the chapel wall. "You do not enter there," he says. Naturally, you look. The chamber door is oak, blackened with age, crossed by iron straps. A little lamp burns before it, protected from rain by a hood of tin. Above the door is painted a faded hand in blessing, and beneath it hangs a strip of cloth embroidered with tiny crosses. You hear, or imagine you hear, the soft tick of cooling metal inside. The monk notices your glance and narrows his eyes. "A relic is kept there," he says. You nod with proper reverence. "This apparently is not enough. A tooth," he adds. The dog sneezes. It is impossible to know whether the sneeze is theological commentary, but the monk takes it poorly. He murmurs something about beasts and thresholds. You lower your gaze and try to look like a traveller who has never doubted a relic in his life. Yet the town's gossip already returns to you the pilgrim in the alehouse who spoke of a saint's fingerbone glowing in rain, the market pin bent in hope, the shrine cloth tucked beneath stone. Relics carry great power in this world, comfort, healing. Prestige, donations, arguments. No one can quite agree whether this particular tooth belonged to a martyr, a bishop, a hermit, or a pig of unusual spiritual promise. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, which may be why the monk guards the door with such energy. He leads you onward before your thoughts become visible. The guest house is plain but welcome. Its door opens into a long room with a packed earth floor near the entrance and stone flags farther in. Rushes lie scattered thinly, cleaner than those at the inn and scented faintly with rosemary. A few narrow beds stand against the walls, little more than wooden frames with straw mattresses and wool covers. A bench, a table, a water jug, and a bowl of coarse salt complete the luxury. After the lane, the stable, and the wet square, it seems nearly royal. Though a royal person might disagree loudly and request 6 more blankets. The monk gives you 1 blanket, then, after looking at your dripping cloak, gives you another with the air of a man sacrificing abbey treasure. He points to a peg for your clothes, a basin for washing, and the hearth where embers glow beneath ash. Guests are to sleep. Guests are not to wander. Guests are not to trouble the brothers. Guests are especially not to ask questions about the relic. The dog lies down immediately by the hearth, proving that he understands hospitality better than most humans. You thank the monk. He gives a short nod and turns away, his lantern shrinking toward the door. Just before he leaves, another bell note rolls through the monastery, deeper and nearer than thunder. He pauses, crosses himself, and pulls his hood closer. Then he slips out, closing the oak door behind him. You remain standing in the guest house dimness. Rain taps the roof tiles overhead. The hearth sighs under its ash. Somewhere beyond the wall, monks move in ordered quiet toward prayer, their sandals whispering, their doors opening and closing, their voices not yet singing but preparing to. The monastery is awake in a way the town is not. It does not bustle. It stirs according to rule, slowly, solemnly, as if every sound has been measured before being allowed into the night. You hang your cloak, wash your cold hands in water that seems personally committed to being colder than necessary, and sit on the edge of the nearest bed. The straw mattress crackles beneath you. The dog opens one eye, confirms you're still there, and returns to his holy work of warming the floor. Through the small shutter, you can see the lamp before the relic door shining faintly across the wet yard. It trembles in the rain, patient and guarded. The half-burned candle from the inn returns to your mind, along with the broken wheel, the market cross, the watchman's bell, all the little sounds that have carried you here. You listen now as monastery bells settle over wet roofs, as oak doors breathe on their hinges, as unseen monks wake to chant against the dark. And though the suspicious monk has warned you not to wander, the night beyond the guest house remains full of soft invitations. You tell yourself you will sleep. This is a reasonable plan, and like many reasonable plans in a medieval night, it immediately begins to fail. The guest house is warmer than the lane, drier than the market square, and less morally complicated than the alehouse. Yet the monastery has its own way of keeping you awake, not loudly, never loudly. It does not shout. It whispers with discipline. Beyond the wall, sandals pass over stone in soft measured scuffs. A latch lifts, then lowers. A door breathes open. Somewhere, a monk clears his throat in the grave manner of a man about to remind darkness that Latin still exists. Then the chanting begins, low and even, not close enough to understand, but near enough to feel. The words rise and fall like water over smooth stones. They seem to gather in the beams above you and settle there with the smoke. The brown dog sleeps by the hearth, paws twitching. Perhaps he dreams of cheese, or disputed relics, or the older market dog who clearly enjoyed superior access to scraps. You pull the wool blanket around your shoulders and listen to the monastery's night sounds. The straw mattress crackles under your smallest movement. The embers shift beneath ash. Rain taps the roof tiles. The lamp outside the relic chamber trembles in the yard. Then, through a narrow inner doorway left not quite closed, you see light. It is a thin yellow line across the floor, steady and inviting. The suspicious monk has told you not to wander, which is precisely why the line of light now seems to possess the full force of destiny. You rise quietly, though the bed frame complains with a wooden creak that sounds, in this holy place, like a confession. The dog opens one eye. You put a finger to your lips. He considers this, then lowers his head, deciding that human disobedience is not his department unless food is involved. You move toward the doorway. On the other side lies a passage, narrow and cool, with stone walls washed in lime and a floor worn smooth by many careful feet. A single beeswax candle burns in a niche. Its flame is small, clean, and honey-scented, far gentler than tallow smoke. A sprig of dried rosemary is tucked behind the holder, perhaps to sweeten the air, perhaps to ward away illness, perhaps because someone once placed rosemary there and everyone has been too devout to remove it. The passage bends, and at the end of it you find the scriptorium. You do not enter fully. Even your curiosity understands that some thresholds are best respected, especially in a monastery where keys sound like commandments. You stand in the shadow near the door and look in. The room is long and low, with narrow windows shuttered against the wet night. Several desks stand beneath wall lamps and candles. At each sits a monk, hood lowered, shoulders bent, hand moving slowly over parchment. Their work fills the chamber with a sound unlike any you have heard tonight, quills scratching in patient strokes, knives scraping gently to correct a mistake, pages turning with a dry, soft sigh. It is a room where silence has texture. One monk dips his pen into a little horn of the ink, another holds a pumice stone and smooths a sheet of parchment. A third leans close to his page, shaping letters so carefully that each one seems less written than planted. Their fingers are stained black and brown. On the table beside them lie goose quills, a penknife, a ruler, bits of chalk, a small pot of red pigment, and a folded cloth to keep the hand from smearing the page. Copying holy texts is slow labour. A careless blot can cost hours. A wandering thought can turn a saint into something grammatically unfortunate, and nobody wants to explain that at breakfast. One older scribe pauses and flexes his fingers. He rubs them with a little salve from a clay pot, perhaps made of beeswax, oil, and herbs. Hands suffer in this work, cold stiffens them, ink dries them, and long hours curl them into claws. Some monasteries keep recipes for ointments against aching joints, using rue, comfrey, or warmed fat, depending on what is at hand and how ambitious the infirmary feels. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such remedies heal the pain or simply give a monk something hopeful to smell while enduring it. Near the far wall, a novice reads aloud in a whisper so the copyists may follow. His voice is soft, careful, and frightened of mistakes. The words travel through the room like a thread. You do not understand them all, but you know the shape of prayer when you hear it. The monks believe words can guard, bless, bind, and guide. A psalm copied well is not merely ink. It is shelter, medicine, weapon, and lamp. Some swear that holy words placed beneath a pillow keep night-wandering mischief from troubling the sleeper. The others say a charm works only if the one who writes it fasts, prays, and avoids thinking unkind thoughts about the cook, which must make effective charms rare on soup days. You remember the blue thread on the stable boy's wrist, the rowan over the doorway, the bent pin at the market cross, the cloth beneath the roadside shrine. Here, the same human hope wears finer clothing, ink instead of thread, parchment instead of thorn, Latin instead of muttering over a cup of ale. Yet the need beneath it is the same: keep harm away, keep warmth near, keep the dark from having the final word. A page turns. The sound is so small that by day you might not notice it. At midnight it seems enormous. Dry skin against dry skin, animal hide made smooth and pale, carrying prayer from one hand to another across years. You wonder who will hear these words after these monks are gone. A lord in his chapel, a nun in a convent choir, a sick child while candles burn at the bedside, a traveller who cannot read but trusts the book because others bow before it. No one can quite agree whether books remember the hands that made them, but standing there, listening to quills scratch in the candlelight, you find it easy to believe they might. The suspicious monk appears beside you so quietly that your heart nearly steps out of your body and files a formal complaint. He does not speak at first. He only looks at you, then at the scriptorium, then back at you with an expression that says Christian hospitality has limits, and you are leaning on one. You bow your head and whisper that you heard the chanting. This is true, though incomplete. He follows your gaze toward the scribes. They work for the souls of men. He murmurs. The answer is solemn enough to close the matter, though the dog, had he been present, might have asked whether souls ever drop crumbs. The monk gestures back toward the guest house. You obey. As you return through the passage, the scratching of quills follows you, faint but steady. It joins the night's other sounds, the watchman's bell, the market ropes, the stable breath, the inn rafters, the gate bar falling into place. You climb back onto the straw bed. The dog lifts his head just enough to confirm that you have survived your terrible rebellion, then sleeps again. Outside, rain softens. Inside, the monastery keeps writing, praying, breathing. You close your eyes with the whisper of psalms still moving through your thoughts. And for a little while, the darkness around you seems ruled not by fear, but by ink, candlelight, and patient hands. Sleep comes only in pieces. You drift for a little while beneath the monastery blanket, held between the scratch of remembered quills and the soft collapse of rain on tile. The guest house breathes around you. A stranger snores near the far wall with the confidence of a man sawing timber in a dream. The hearth ember glows under ash. The brown dog twitches once, paws moving as if he trots through some grand market of bones, where no monk questions his right to enter. Then a bell sounds again. It is not the great ringing that shook the yard earlier, but a smaller note, nearer and lighter, perhaps from the gatehouse bell or a handbell passing through the cloister. It folds into your half-dream and pulls you gently upward. You open your eyes. The room is dim, the shutter silvered at its edge, and the air smells of damp wool, old straw, rosemary rushes, and faint beeswax. For a moment, you do not know whether you're in an inn, a stable, a market, or a monastery, because the night has gathered all those places inside you like coins in a purse. You rise quietly, the dog lifts his head. This time, perhaps because he has judged your wandering harmless, or perhaps because he has lost faith in monastic hospitality, he stands and follows. You pull on your cloak, still cold at the hem, and step to the door. The guest-house latch gives a careful click. Outside, the monastery yard lies wet and pale. The lamp before the relic chamber still burns, though smaller now, its flame bowed inside the tin hood. You pass without approaching. The suspicious monk is nowhere in sight. but you feel his disapproval preserved in the stones, like smoke in rafters. A side gate near the lower wall stands open just enough for a lay brother carrying a bucket. He moves across the yard with his head down, and you hear water slosh against wood. Monasteries need water for washing, brewing, cooking, ink-making, gardens, and all the less poetic labours that keep holiness from becoming hungry and badly scented. You slip through after him, not stealthily, exactly, but with the soft humility of someone who would rather not explain himself to anyone with keys. Beyond the monastery wall, a path slopes toward the river. The mist thickens as you descend. It gathers around your boots and turns every bush into a crouched shape. Frost has not quite formed, but the ground is cold enough to make each puddle shine like dull pewter. Somewhere behind you, the town roofs lie dark and close. Ahead, unseen water moves with a low, heavy patience. The river appears slowly, not as a line, but as a presence. First the smell mud, reeds, wet rope, fish scales, rotting leaves, and the mineral chill of deep water. Then the sound, a soft slap against stone, a hollow knock of wood against posts, a slow sucking pull beneath the bank. Last comes the sight, a broad dark ribbon under the moon's hidden light, carrying mist over its surface like breath over a sleeping mouth. You stand on the bank and listen. Several barges are moored along the posts, their flat bodies black against the water. One knocks gently with each shift of the current wood to post, pause, wood to post. Another creaks at its rope. A little skiff lies overturned near a shed. Rainwater gathered in its seams. Nets hang from poles to dry, though nothing dries well in this weather. Their knots drip steadily into the mud. Near a pile of wicker fish traps, a cat slips away, narrow and offended, vanishing under a broken plank before the dog can decide whether diplomacy is possible. By day, this riverbank must be busy with porters, boatmen, washerwomen, fish sellers, and boys sent to fetch water who somehow return late, wet and full of excuses. Now the work lies abandoned but not absent. Smooth washing stones sit near the shallows, pale where generations of hands have beaten linen against them. A wooden paddle leans beside a tub. A bar of harsh lye soap rests on a ledge, wrapped in cloth. Laundry in such a town is labour enough to humble royalty, though royalty usually arranges not to notice. Wool must be aired, linen scrubbed, shirts boiled when sickness has passed through a house, and stains treated with ash, urine, herbs, or prayer, depending on the stain and the optimism of the washer. Some swear that washing clothes after midnight invites the dead to borrow them before dawn. Others say the warning was invented by washerwomen who were tired of being asked to do one more load. No one can quite agree, which is often how the best rules survive. A frog calls from the reeds, then another answers. Their voices seem too alive for the hour, small wet notes rising from the dark bank. Somewhere farther downstream, a water wheel turns once, perhaps moved by current alone, and gives a tired wooden clack before stopping again. You think of the market square, of weighing stones and empty stalls, and realise the river has its own market after dark frogs, rats, cats, dripping nets, shifting barges, ropes, reeds, and unseen fish moving beneath the surface with no concern for tolls. The dog stands close to your leg, less bold here. He watches the water with his ears half raised. Many townsfolk distrust rivers at night, not because rivers become different, but because they become honest. In daylight, people talk over them, work beside them, cross them, wash in them, dump into them, bargain near them. At night, water speaks for itself. It gurgles under stones. It tugs at ropes. It carries things from elsewhere. A twig, a lost glove, a dead leaf, a rumour of rain from hills you have never seen. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the sounds you hear come from nearby or far away. The river bends them. A cough from a boatman's hut seems to rise from the opposite bank. A plank knock might be a fish trap, a loose oar, or a door shutting somewhere upriver. The water makes ventriloquists of ordinary things. No wonder people tell stories about river spirits, drowned bells, and pale lights moving over marshes. Mist does half the work, and the imagination, being underfed and cold, completes the rest. You walk along the bank. Your boots sink slightly in the mud. Reeds brush your cloak with damp fingers. A rope crosses the path, and you step over it carefully, remembering the broken cartwheel and how small mistakes travel into morning. Beside one mooring post hangs a little charm made of fishbone and blue thread. Boatmen carry charms too, often tucked beneath benches or tied near the prow, asking protection from storms, hidden snags, bad crossings. And the sort of passenger who swears he knows boats because he once saw one from a bridge. A shutter opens in a hut near the bank. A man's face appears, wrapped in shadow and beard. He looks at you. You look at him. The dog looks hopeful. The man closes the shutter again, apparently deciding that riverbank wanderers are best left to saints, dogs, and their own poor judgment. The moon breaks through briefly. Silver touches the water. The barges become clearer rope coils, wet planks, a pole laid across a deck, a folded cloak under canvas. The washing stones shine. The mist lifts just enough for you to see the town wall reflected upside down in the river, wavering as if the whole town floats on dark water. For a moment, the monastery bell, the watchman's staff, the inn song, the stable breath, the market ropes, and the quills in the scriptorium all seem to gather here, carried on currents too slow to see. Then cloud covers the moon. The river darkens again, but not completely. You have learned by now that darkness here is never empty. It is full of small labours, old fears, tired animals, sleeping people, guarded relics, wet rope, hidden cats, and water talking to itself beneath the bank. You turn back toward the path before dawn can find you too far from shelter. The dog follows gladly, though he pauses once to sniff the washing stones, perhaps checking whether midnight laundry truly belongs to the dead. Behind you, a barge knocks gently against its postwood. Pause. Wood. Pause. The sound follows you up through the mist, steady as a sleepy heartbeat, while the river keeps carrying away all the things the town has not yet named. You climb back from the river with mist clinging to your cloak and the barge's patient knocking still keeping time in your ear. Wood. Pause. Wood. Pause. It follows you up the path like a quiet second heartbeat, until the slope rises enough that the river disappears behind reeds, walls, and the low shoulders of sleeping houses. The dog trots ahead, damp along the belly, carrying the grave dignity of an animal who has inspected water, cats, fish bones, and possible ghosts, and found most of them unsuitable for eating. The monastery bells fade behind you. The town lies ahead, not quite awake but no longer fully asleep. This is the thin hour before dawn, when darkness loosens at the edges and the first workers begin to stir because bread, fire, animals, and hunger do not wait for sunrise. A pale greyness gathers above the rooftops. It does not yet brighten anything, but it gives shape to chimneys, gables, and the church tower. Smoke begins rising from one or two houses, nearly invisible at first, then thicker where it meets the cold. You enter by a smaller postern near the lower wall, where a sleepy gate lad wrapped in a cloak sits on an overturned tub with his chin on his chest. The door has been left barred but not fully shut for those with reason to pass before morning monks, bakers, water carriers, and others whose lives are ruled by tasks earlier than comfort. He opens one eye as you slip through, sees the dog, and mutters something that might be a greeting or a complaint about dogs having better hours than boys. Inside, the lanes smell different now. The sour damp of midnight remains, but beneath it comes the first warm breath of ovens. It finds you before you find them flour, ash, yeast, smoke, rye, barley, and the deep brown promise of crust, your stomach, which has endured weak ale, cold mist, and too many spiritual questions, wakes with sudden interest. The dog notices the change in you and looks approving, as if at last you understand the true purpose of travel. You follow the scent down a lane where the houses lean close and their upper rooms almost meet overhead. A shutter opens. A woman tosses a basin of dirty water into the gutter with practiced aim and no ceremony. From somewhere behind a door comes the thump of kneading, steady as a drum wrapped in cloth. Another thump answers from farther on. Then another. The bakers are awake. A low building near the corner glows red at its seams. Its doorway stands open despite the cold, and warmth spills into the street like treasure. You pause outside, watching a boy carry a basket of split wood inside. Flour coats his sleeves, his hair, even one eyebrow, making him look older and more ghostly than he probably wishes. He nearly trips over the dog, recovers, and gives the animal a look of betrayal usually reserved for tax collectors. Inside, the bakehouse is already alive. The oven mouth shines dull red, its heat breathing across the room in waves. A baker with bare forearms dusted white uses a long wooden peel to shift loaves deeper into the oven. Another works at a heavy table, folding dough with both hands, pressing it forward, turning it, pressing again. A girl sprinkles flour across boards in pale sweeps. Sacks of grain lean against the wall, some marked with chalk signs, some tied with cord and sealed with bits of clay. A stack of round loaves rest beneath cloth, waiting its turn. The room is warm enough to make your face thaw and your cloak steam faintly at the hem. This is not gentle work. Bread may seem humble when it sits on a trencher beside pottage, but before that it is grinding, hauling, sifting, kneading, firing, timing, bargaining, and hoping the flour has not been stretched with more bran than anyone admits. Towns often keep strict rules about loaf weight and price. A baker who cheats too openly may be fined, dragged through the streets, or forced to sell at a loss while neighbours enjoy the educational spectacle. No one can quite agree whether this makes bakers more honest or simply more careful with their thumbs near the scales. You stand near the doorway, careful not to block anyone. The baker glances at you once, takes in the cloak, the mud, the dog, and the general look of a person who has spent too much of the night listening to objects creak, and decides you're harmless enough. He jerks his chin toward a bench by the wall. "Sit if you keep clear," he says. You sit. The bench is warm from being near the oven. It might be the finest luxury you've known all night. The dog lowers himself beside your feet and stares at the loaves with the same sacred attention he gave the inn cheese. Perhaps all religion begins in longing. The baker's wife moves to a small shelf near the dough trough. There, beside a wooden bowl of salt, she keeps a little twist of cloth tied with red thread. She touches it before lifting the cloth from the rising dough. Some swear that salt spilled near the trough keeps ill-wishing away. Others tuck a crumb from yesterday's first loaf into the new batch, so good rising carries forward like a blessing. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the dough rises because of warmth, leaven, and patient hands, or because every baker in town has made peace with the idea that bread enjoys being flattered. The dough beneath the cloth is swollen and soft, alive in its quiet way. She presses 2 fingers into it, watches the marks slowly fill, and nods. A small charm is chalked on the underside of the trough, a cross, a circle, and perhaps the baker's mark. Not everyone can write, but marks matter. They sign loaves, barrels, tools, doors, sacks, and sometimes debts. They say this is mine, this is owed, this is measured, this has passed through known hands. You think of the scriptorium, the monks drawing letters with breathless care, and hear the baker drawing his own signs in flour, chalk, and crust. One feeds the soul, one feeds the belly, and most people require both, though the belly tends to make its case more loudly. A loaf comes from the oven. The baker slides the peel beneath it and brings it out with a faint scrape. Crust dark and split, steam escaping through the seams. The smell fills the room so completely that for a moment all other thoughts step aside. Wet lanes, suspicious monks, toll stones, broken wheels, river mist, all of it softens beneath fresh bread. The baker taps the bottom of the loaf with 2 fingers and listens. A hollow sound answers. He grunts approval. The dog's tail moves once. A smaller loaf, cracked at one side and too misshapen for sale, is set on the edge of the table. The baker's wife tears it open, steam rising white in the oven glow. She gives a piece to the flour-dusted boy, another to the girl, and after a pause, one to you. It is coarse, hot, and slightly sour, with a crust that resists before yielding. You hold it in both hands, grateful for the heat as much as the food. The dog receives a scrap so small it seems symbolic, but he accepts it with the solemnity of a knight receiving land. Outside, the first cart rattles faintly in the lane. The broken wheel comes back to mind. Perhaps that carter's sacks hold grain meant for this very bakehouse. Perhaps, by mid-morning, the baker will be complaining in the square, the stable boy will repeat the tale of the old ford, and the suspicious monk will somehow disapprove of the whole affair from a safe distance. Small sounds become small troubles become morning gossip becomes the town's daily bread. The sky lightens a shade. More footsteps pass outside now, a water carrier with sloshing buckets, a woman leading a sleepy child by the hand, a man coughing as he drives 2 pigs away from a doorway where they have no legal or moral right to be. The bakehouse grows hotter. Flour floats in the air like pale dust in a chapel beam. The baker's peel scrapes, dough thumps, wood cracks, loaves shift and settle under cloth, and beneath all of it, quieter than the oven, you hear the town beginning to wake not in one grand stirring, but in many humble sounds layered together. You finish the bread slowly, saving the last warmth in your palm. The dog leans against your boot, hopeful beyond reason. When you stand, the baker's wife gives you a nod, neither farewell nor invitation, only the plain kindness of someone too busy to decorate kindness with words. You step back into the lane, carrying the smell of bread in your cloak. Behind you, the ovens breathe red. Ahead, the grey morning waits among rooftops and bells, and for a while, the forgotten sounds of midnight are joined by a new sound altogether, the soft breaking of crust, the thud of dough, and the town's first hunger answering the dark. You step from the bakehouse with heat still tucked in your palms, as if the bread has lent you a small private sun. Behind you, the oven breathes, the peel scrapes, and flour-dusted voices fold into the waking lane. Ahead, the grey before dawn lies soft over the roofs. Smoke lifts from chimneys. A cock crows from somewhere it should probably not be, judging by the angry hiss that follows from behind a shutter. The dog trots beside you with renewed faith in the world. Because bread has occurred, and therefore all journeys remain promising. At the lower end of town, a small group gathers near the postern gate. They are pilgrims, 5 of them by the look 2 women in wool cloaks, a narrow-faced man with a staff, a broad widow with a patched hood, and a young apprentice whose master has likely sent him along to pray for someone's toothache, debt, or soul. Pewter badges glint on hats and cloaks, little signs of journeys already made or hoped for a shell, a saint's wheel, a tiny flask, a crossed key. They clink softly whenever the pilgrims shift. The gate lad lifts the bar with a groan that seems too large for his thin arms. He yawns openly while doing it, and no one scolds him, because dawn has not yet made hypocrites of the sleepy. The postern opens onto a road curving past garden plots and out toward the fields. Beyond it, a wayside shrine stands beneath a bare hawthorn, its little roof sagging, its painted saint nearly washed pale by weather. Someone has laid fresh rushes at its base, though they are already damp. A chipped bowl holds 3 pins, a copper farthing, and a crust too hard even for devotion, though the dog briefly disagrees. You pass through with the pilgrims as the town wall falls behind you. The sound changes again. Within the wall, mornings begin in layers ovens, buckets, pigs, coughs, doors, and bells. Outside, the road gives you open air, frost-silvered grass, the distant whisper of water, and the soft crush of feet on mud hardened at the edges. The pilgrims walk slowly at first, as if their joints must be persuaded that holiness is worth the inconvenience. The narrow-faced man touches the shrine post with 2 fingers, then presses those fingers to his lips. One of the women kneels and murmurs a prayer, her breath showing white. The widow removes a tiny strip of cloth from inside her sleeve and ties it to a thorn. Such cloths hang from shrines all over the countryside, left for fevers, aching limbs, childbirth fears, safe roads, lost cattle, stubborn husbands, and every trouble too ordinary to receive its own miracle. Some swear the saint takes the sickness into the rag as weather takes damp into wool. Others say the rag simply tells the sufferer that the burden has been noticed. No one can quite agree which of these is kinder. You sit on a low stone near the shrine while the others settle. The baker's wife's bread, still warm at its heart, comes from your pouch. You break it carefully and share what you can. A pilgrim gives you hard cheese wrapped in linen. The widow offers a dried apple, wrinkled and sweet. The apprentice produces nothing but an apologetic look, which is not filling, but does seem sincere. The dog receives a crumb from 3 different hands and immediately decides pilgrims are among the highest forms of humanity. The bells from town reach you faintly here, softened by wall and mist. A monastery bell answers from the rise behind, slower and deeper. Between them, the roadside shrine seems to stand in a little bowl of sound badge clink, bread tear, cloak rustle, staff tap, yawn, prayer, crow call. You chew slowly, tasting rye, smoke, and salt. Your boots remain damp, because boots in this world are less footwear than long-term negotiations with mud. The pilgrims begin to speak in low voices. One woman is travelling to give thanks for a child who survived a winter fever after being touched with a ribbon that had brushed a saint's reliquary. The narrow-faced man seeks pardon for a vow delayed so long that even he looks embarrassed by it. The widow says she walks because her husband once promised to do so, then died before the road could collect him, and she has decided promises should not be left wandering. Those who tell such tales never fully agree whether a promise belongs to the speaker, the listener, or God, but everyone agrees it is safer not to leave one unattended. The apprentice asks whether pilgrim roads are truly haunted by lights that lead travellers into marshes. The widow snorts. The narrow-faced man says yes, but only near old battlefields. One woman says no, the lights are marsh vapours. The other says marsh vapours are exactly how spirits disguise themselves when clergy are nearby. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the road ahead contains wonder, danger, or merely people who enjoy improving a story at every mile. You think of the river's dark speech, the barge knocking against posts, the relic tooth in the monastery, and the monk's watchful eyes. Every traveller seems to carry some token against uncertainty badge, thread, bent coin, prayer, bread, dog. You have no badge of your own, only mud on your hem and the memory of many night sounds gathered like charms in your mind. A little wind stirs the cloth strips on the hawthorn. They flutter softly, whispering without words. Dawn lifts another shade. The fields beyond the shrine begin to appear furrows pale with frost, hedges black and fine, a footpath threading toward a darker band of trees. Somewhere far off, sheep bells tremble. A crow lands on the shrine roof and calls harshly, as if judging the quality of the breakfast. The dog barks once, but without conviction. The pilgrims rise by slow degrees. Knees crack, packs are shifted, staffs are taken up. One woman sprinkles a pinch of salt near the shrine base, a small act for safe passage, because salt preserves meat, cleans wounds, flavours pottage, and apparently negotiates with the unseen. The widow crosses herself, then touches the dog's head for luck. He accepts this solemnly, though he would likely prefer more bread. You stand with them. The town behind you is now a low shape of wall and roof, breathing smoke into the morning. The market square waits for voices. The broken cartwheel waits for daylight judgment. The suspicious monk guards his relic, or his sleep, with equal devotion. Ahead, the pilgrim road bends through frost and hedge, carrying stories no one will tell the same way twice. You step forward as the badges begin to clink again, small silver notes in the grey air. Prayers mingle with yawns. Bread warmth fades from your fingers but remains in your chest, and with the faithful dog at your heel and the shrine shrinking behind you, You follow the pilgrims into the open morning, where the forgotten sounds of midnight become road sounds, field sounds, and the first quiet promises of the day. You walk with the pilgrims until the road leaves the last garden walls behind and becomes a pale ribbon between winter fields. The town settles at your back, low and smoky beyond the postern gate, while the roadside shrine grows smaller among the hawthorn branches, its fluttering cloth strips fading into mist. Ahead, the land opens under the slow grey of morning. Frost lies over the furrows like powdered bone, not thick enough to cover the world, only enough to trace every ridge. Every footprint, every cart rut left by yesterday's labour. Your boots press into the half-frozen mud with a crisp edge, then a softer give beneath. It is the sort of road that cannot decide whether to be solid or treacherous, which makes it very medieval in spirit. The dog pads along beside you, nose low, tail level, occasionally stopping to examine a tuft of grass as if it contains urgent legal testimony. Behind him, the pilgrims' badges clink faintly, little pewter notes keeping company with staff taps and quiet breaths. A sheep bell trembles somewhere ahead. At first it's only one thin sound, easily mistaken for a loose buckle or a far harness ring. Then another answers. Through the mist, sheep appear as pale, drifting shapes along a field boundary, their wool silvered by frost. A boy in a patch cloak stands near them with a crook in his hand, hood pulled close, face red from cold. He watches your small group pass without speaking, then raises 2 fingers in a sleepy blessing or greeting. His dog, a rangy black creature with one torn ear, gives your brown companion a long look. Your dog looks back. Both animals holding the stern silence of professionals who know that sheep are a serious matter and travellers are not. The pilgrims murmur prayers as they walk. One woman counts them on her fingers because she has no beads. The widow keeps a steady pace, broader and stronger than she first seemed by the shrine. The apprentice stumbles once on a frozen rut, recovers, and pretends the road did something unusual. No one corrects him. Roads have been blamed for worse. You pass a field where the stubble of last harvest stands stiff under frost. Beyond it, a low barn crouches beside a hedge. Its thatch is patched with darker bundles, and a wisp of smoke rises from a hut nearby. These fields feed the town when weather, taxes, pests, lords, and saints permit. In winter, the work does not vanish. It changes shape. Hedges must be mended, animals watched, dung carted, tools repaired, grain guarded, and firewood gathered before the cold eats courage. People who imagine peasants simply sleep until spring have never met a hungry cow or a roof with opinions about rain. The narrow-faced pilgrim points to small bundles tied to several fence posts, straw crosses, bits of wool, and strips of red thread. For the wolves, he says. The apprentice swallows. No one can quite agree whether such charms keep wolves from the flock, call saintly protection, or simply make the shepherd feel less alone during the dark hours. Some swear that iron buried beneath a sheepfold gate turns away tooth and claw. Others say a wolf respects only hunger, and hunger respects very little. You look toward the field edge where mist thickens under the hedgerow, and decide that both opinions may be true in their own uncomfortable ways. A sound drifts from the darker band of forest beyond the fields. It is not a howl, not exactly. More a long, low call carried thinly by damp air, stretched until it might be animal, wind, or the memory of a story. The pilgrim stops speaking. The sheep boy turns his head. Even the badges seem to still. Your dog steps closer to your boot, and though you appreciate his loyalty, you notice he positions you slightly between himself and the sound. The widow snorts softly, but not with amusement. Fox, she says. The narrow-faced man says, wolf. One woman says, a soul not prayed for. The other woman says nothing, which is somehow worse. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what waits at the edge of the woods before sunrise. In daylight, forests offer timber, nuts, berries, herbs, grazing, charcoal, and paths to other settlements. At night, they gather every fear that does not fit inside a house: wolves, thieves, outlaws, wandering spirits, strange lights, old gods hidden under new prayers, and the simple fact that a person can lose the road in 10 steps when mist turns the trees alike. You stand there with frost breathing around your ankles and find the villagers' fears of the woods suddenly less foolish than they might sound beside a bright hearth. The sound does not come again. The sheep bells resume, one by one. The boy clicks his tongue, and the black dog moves the flock gently along the hedge. Your pilgrims begin walking too, though closer together now. You follow, feeling the road harden beneath your boots where frost has kept the mud firm. Overhead, the sky lightens from iron to pewter. A crow flies low across the furrows, its wings making a dry sound in the cold air. Near a gap in the hedge, you pass a little pile of stones with a wooden cross stuck into the top. Someone has laid a sheep's tuft of wool at its base, along with 3 acorns and a bent nail. Perhaps it marks where an animal was taken. Perhaps a traveller died there one winter. Perhaps it is older than anyone remembers, and the cross was added later to make a troublesome place behave. Even now, it is hard to tell whether people honour the dead, calm the land, or reassure themselves by giving fear a shape. The widow touches the bent nail as she passes. The apprentice watches her and then does the same, though with less confidence. You do not laugh, after the night you have had with relic teeth, river charms, broken wheel bundles, and monks guarding doors in the rain. You understand that hands need something to do when the world feels large and cold. A cart track joins the road from the left. Its ruts are deep, frozen at the edges, and dark where wheels have broken the surface. You think again of the cracked wheel in the stable yard, the spoke leaning away from its hub like a tired thought. Here, far from the bakehouse and market cross, the importance of wheels becomes plain. Roads bind town to field, field to mill, mill to oven, oven to hungry mouths. A single broken wheel is not a small thing. It is a pause in the whole chain of mourning. Medieval life moves slowly, yes, but it also depends on everything slow arriving roughly when expected. The dog suddenly bounds forward, nose deep in the grass. He emerges with a frozen crust of something unidentifiable and deeply cherished. You tell him no. He considers your authority, weighs it against his discovery, and reluctantly drops it with an expression of wounded nobility. The widow laughs under her breath, the first warm sound since the forest call. Soon the road bends along a ridge low enough to be called a hill only by generous mapmakers. From here, you see the town behind you more clearly. Smoke rises from many chimneys now. The church tower stands over the roofs. The monastery sits beyond like a pale block in the mist, its bells silent for the moment. Between wall and field, the morning spreads slowly, touching thatch, frost, hedge, wool, and road. Another sound comes from the forest, but this time it is only a branch cracking under frost or bird weight. Still, everyone listens. That is what the night has taught you. A town is made not only of walls and markets, but of listening for bells, bolts, horses, river ropes, ovens, wolves, and whatever waits where the light has not yet reached. You pull your cloak closer and keep walking. The pilgrim badges clink, the sheep bells tremble behind you. The forest remains at the edge of sight, neither friend nor enemy, simply old, dark, and full of its own quiet business. And as dawn grows stronger over the furrows, you carry forward the thin cry from the trees, softened now into memory. One more forgotten sound joining all the others in the long waking of the medieval day. You do not follow the pilgrims far beyond the ridge. The road ahead belongs to their vows, their sore feet, their badges, and the long argument between hope and mud. Yours bends back toward the town, where smoke now rises in thicker threads, and the day begins calling people by name. The widow presses a crumb into the dog's mouth before you part, which nearly persuades him to abandon you for a holier life. But after a moment of visible moral struggle, he returns to your side. Loyalty, it seems, can survive one crumb, though perhaps not 2. You leave the pilgrims at the fork where a frost-whitened signpost leans over the road. One arm points toward a distant abbey, another toward the next market town, and the third has lost its painted letters almost entirely, which feels less like guidance than a wooden shrug. Some swear that signposts at crossroads confuse spirits by offering too many choices. Others say spirits read better than travellers and simply enjoy watching humans guess. No one can quite agree whether the missing letters were weathered away, stolen for firewood, or scratched off by boys with more knives than sense. You turn back toward the town by a track that skirts the outer fields and climbs toward the Lord's Keep. The keep rises on a mound just within the wall, older and sterner than the houses below, its stones dark with rain and its narrow windows still pricked with torchlight. By daylight it may seem like power made square and inconvenient. In this grey hour it seems half asleep, its battlements dissolving into mist, its torches burning like the last stars reluctant to leave. The track passes a small pond glazed at the edges with thin ice. Reeds stand stiff along the bank. A servant girl kneels there with a wooden pail, breaking the surface with a stick. The crack is sharp in the morning quiet. She dips her pail, lifts it with both hands, and staggers a little under the weight. Water carrying is one of those labours that hides inside every household as naturally as breathing. Water for kitchens, washing, brewing, animals, hands, floors, and fires. A castle may look grand from far away, but inside it is mostly people carrying things from one place to another and being told to hurry. You offer to help lift the pail to her shoulder. She accepts with a nod, eyeing the dog only briefly. Around her neck hangs a little pouch, stitched from faded linen. Perhaps it holds salt, a saint's scrap, dried herb, or a written charm folded too small to read. Some swear that a bit of vervain carried at dawn keeps weariness away until noon. Even now, it is hard to tell whether it works, because most servants are weary by breakfast regardless. You continue upward. Near the outer yard of the keep, the first guards are changing places. One stands stamping his boots beside a brazier, hands wrapped around a clay cup of something steaming. Another adjusts the strap of his helmet while trying not to yawn where his captain can see. Their spears lean against the wall in a neat row, and the metal points catch torchlight in small, dull flashes. A watchfire burns low in a pit near the gate, giving off more smoke than heat, which is a very medieval bargain. The gate into the keep is smaller than the town gate, but heavier, its oak boards studded with iron. A porter lifts the bar with slow ceremony and mutters about hinges, weather, and the general failure of wood to remain young. The sound of the bar rising reminds you of the town gate closing behind you at dusk, that deep thud settling in your ribs. Now the same kind of sound opens the day. Night shuts one door, morning opens another. And both require someone underpaid to drag a large piece of timber. Inside the yard, life wakes unevenly. A boy carries a bundle of kindling almost as large as himself. Two women cross from the kitchen door with baskets of onions and leeks. A man in a leather apron pours water into a trough where a sleepy horse lowers its head. Chickens scratch near the dung heap, deeply convinced that treasure is buried there. Somewhere a pig squeals in protest at being moved, though pigs protest so broadly that no one can tell whether the offence is hunger, weather, theology, or merely being a pig. From the kitchen comes warmth, smoke, and the rich smell of pottage beginning again. You drift toward it, pulled less by choice than by the ancient authority of food. The kitchen is set apart from the main hall because fire is useful, but not to be trusted too close to expensive roofs. Within, servants move around great hearths where flames lick blackened pots. One woman stirs a cauldron with a paddle, and the thick contents answer in slow bubbles oats, peas, leeks, perhaps cabbage, perhaps yesterday's bones giving what they can. Smoked fish hangs from hooks in the rafters, silver brown and stiff. Coarse loaves sit wrapped in cloth. A tray of wooden trenchers waits to be carried into the hall. You stand near the threshold, careful to remain out of the traffic of knives, pots, and people who know exactly where they're going. A cook with red hands and a face bright from heat glances at you, then at the dog. "Not in the kitchen," she says. This seems aimed more at him than at you. The dog sits immediately outside the threshold with a look of wounded innocence he has clearly practiced. A kitchen boy slips him a fish skin when the cook turns away, proving that rules and mercy can coexist if mercy moves quickly. On a shelf near the hearth, you notice a small bowl of salt and a dark lump of bread set aside. Kitchen folk sometimes keep such things for luck, for household blessing, or to protect against souring milk and ill-wished dough. Some swear that if the first smoke of morning blows back into the kitchen, the day will bring quarrels. Others say smoke blows wherever it likes because chimneys are badly behaved. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, though every cook watches the first smoke all the same. The keep's hall begins to stir beyond the kitchen passage. Servants carry rushes in armfuls and scatter them across the floor. A groom brings in an armload of wood. Someone polishes a pewter cup with a cloth. A steward counts aloud under his breath, pointing from trencher to bench to cupboard as if numbers might escape if not watched closely. The lord is not yet visible, nor his household gentry, but their needs arrive before them like heralds' food: fire, clean cloth, water, candles, order. A bell rings from the town below, not the deep monastery note, not the watchman's little clatter, but the church bell calling the waking hour. It rolls up to the keep and crosses the yard, touching the torches just as one guard pinches out a guttering flame. The sky's brighter now, though the sun remains hidden behind cloud. Torchlight and dawn mingle uneasily on the stones. For a little while, the keep belongs to both night and day. You sit near a wall where the dog can lie beside your boot, and the kitchen warmth can reach your knees. A servant passes with a bowl of thin pottage, and, seeing your travel-worn face, leaves a small portion for you without comment. It tastes of oats, leeks, smoke, and gratitude. You eat from a wooden spoon while the keep continues waking cartwheels outside the gate, hoofbeats in the yard, the scrape of ash from the hearth, the slap of dough in the kitchen, the cough of a guard, the thud of chopped wood, the low hum of servants speaking before their voices have fully risen. The broken cartwheel has not yet arrived, but you feel it approaching in the day's pattern. Soon someone will mention delayed sacks, someone will blame the old Ford, someone will call for a wheelwright, the market will open, the toll stones will matter again. The suspicious monk will guard his relic, the river will carry barges, the world, having survived another night, will ask everyone to work. You finish the pottage slowly, smoke curls in the rafters, the dog sighs, warmed by kitchen air and illegal fish skin. Around you, the Lord's keep wakes by torchlight, not with trumpets or shining banners, but with embers stirred, doors unbarred, food carried, boots stamped, and the countless small sounds of ordinary hands keeping stone alive. The keep's morning gathers weight. At first it is only warmth at your knees, pottage in your hands, smoke curling above the hearth, and the dog sleeping with the shameless peace of a creature who has received illegal fish skin and now believes justice lives in the world. But then the doors open wider. More boots cross the yard. More voices press through the passages. The great house, which a little while ago seemed to wake in fragments, begins to remember that it is not merely a shelter of stone, but a place where orders are given, debts are named, complaints are sharpened, and everyone tries to make yesterday's trouble sound like someone else's fault. A bell rings from below, clearer now that morning is lifted. It comes from the town church, bright against the damp air, and the sound travels up to the keep as if climbing the road you walked before dawn. Beneath it, another bell answers from somewhere inside the yard, smaller and practical, calling people toward the hall. You rise and brush crumbs from your cloak, and follow the movement of servants, guards, tenants, and tradesmen toward the long chamber where the manor court is beginning. The hall looks different by day. Last night, halls were places of rushes, candles, rafters, dreams, and superstition. This one still has rushes on the floor, and its rafters are just as soot black. But daylight through narrow windows gives everything edges. Benches stand along the walls. A table is set near the far end, with a cloth laid over it, though the cloth has seen enough use to have opinions. Behind it sits the steward, a narrow man with ink on one finger and the calm severity of someone who knows exactly how much barley a person owes and is willing to discuss it at length. Beside him lies a roll of parchment, a horn of ink, a small knife for trimming quills, and a wooden box with a clasp. A clerk bends over the table, already writing. His pen scratches in a way that reminds you of the monastery scriptorium, though here the words are less likely to save souls and more likely to accuse someone of failing to mend a fence. Still, ink is ink, and it carries power whether it records psalms or pig complaints. You take a place near the wall, the dog sits at your feet, alert now, perhaps sensing that courts are rich in dropped bread, emotional speeches, and unattended ankles. Around you, people gather in small knots, a miller with flour in his beard, a widow with a basket on her arm, a carter still smelling faintly of stable straw, a man holding a chicken upside down by the legs while the chicken expresses strong legal objections, a woman with red hands from washing, a wheelwright carrying tools wrapped in cloth. Then you see the broken wheel. It has been brought into the yard and leaned near the doorway like a witness too large for the bench. The cracked spoke shows clearly in daylight, pale where the wood has split. The carter from the alehouse stands beside it, looking less cheerful than he did while losing at dice, though in fairness he was not very cheerful then either. He tells the steward the wheel cracked at the old ford, after dark, when the road gave way beneath the left side. The stable boy, summoned to speak, repeats what he told you the ford has a reputation. The steward does not look impressed by reputations. No one can quite agree whether the ford is cursed, the carter says, glancing around for support, but many know it is unlucky. The wheelwright sniffs. It is unlucky to overload a cart. This is difficult to answer because it sounds very much like truth. The steward asks what was in the sacks. Barley. The carter says, for the baker. At this, a murmur passes through the hall, because bread is not an abstract concern. Delay barley, delay flour, delay flour, delay bread, and even patient people begin to develop politics. The baker himself arrives late, sleeves still dusted white, and says nothing at first. He merely looks at the wheel with the expression of a man considering whether curses are cheaper than repairs. The steward orders the wheelwright to inspect the damage, the carter to pay part, the road reeve to examine the ford, and everyone to stop blaming pale ladies in the water until the axle has been measured. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether this is justice, compromise, or simply the steward wishing to move on before noon. The clerk writes it all down. Next comes the woman with red washing hands. She complains that someone has been leaving refuse near the river stones, fouling the place where linen is beaten clean. A fisherman protests that washerwomen use enough lye to frighten the fish. The woman replies that if fish are so delicate, they should not live in a river used by a town. This seems a powerful argument. The steward rubs his forehead. You think of the midnight river, the barges knocking, the washing stones pale in moonlight, and the belief that laundry after dark invites the dead to borrow clothes. None of this is mentioned in court, perhaps wisely. Then the man with the chicken steps forward. The chicken, it turns out, is evidence. It has been found in the herb garden of the monastery guest house, scratching among the monk's winter leeks. At this news, the suspicious monk appears near the hall door, as if conjured by irritation. His hood is pulled low, his mouth drawn tight, and his expression suggests that poultry is yet another proof of worldly decline. He says the bird belongs to the widow near the lower lane. The widow says the bird has a wandering nature and cannot be held to ordinary standards of obedience. The chicken flaps once, strongly supporting this claim. Some swear that hens crossing a threshold at dawn bring luck if they enter quietly and trouble if they cluck. Others say hens simply go where food is, which may be the most reliable superstition of all. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the monk is more offended by the damaged leeks or by the chicken's lack of reverence near the relic chamber. He does not mention the tooth, but you see his eyes flick toward anyone who might. The steward finds the widow 2 eggs and orders the chicken confined. The dog looks at the chicken with sudden interest. You place one hand gently on his collar, not because you doubt his character, but because character has limits when poultry is near. More cases follow, each one small enough to seem almost comic and large enough to matter deeply to the person speaking. A broken hedge, a missing measure of oats, a debt unpaid since Michaelmas, a child's fever blamed on a neighbour's evil eye, a charm tied to a cow's horn without permission. A complaint that a certain pig has entered a garden 3 times and appears unrepentant. The steward listens, judges, orders, fines, postpones, and occasionally looks toward heaven as if hoping a saint might descend and handle swine law personally. You hear herbs named as remedies: sage for the throat, yarrow for bleeding, betony for the head, leechcraft for swellings, honey for wounds, warm ale for almost anything if the patient is persuasive. You hear charms too, though spoken more quietly, threads tied at wrists, iron under thresholds, written prayers folded into linen pouches. The court pretends to belong to law alone, but beneath law flows the same older river of fear and hope you have followed all night. By the time the bell rings again, the hall has warmed with bodies and breath. Wet wool dries near the doorway. Rushes crunch beneath restless feet. The half-burned candle from last night seems to live again in every small flame along the wall. The market square, the stable yard, the monastery, the riverbank, the bakehouse, the frost fields, all of them arrive here as complaints, debts, remedies, and decisions. You sit quietly while the dog lowers his head onto your boot. Yesterday's forgotten midnight sounds have become today's business beneath the bell tower, the cracked wheel, the river stones, the wandering chicken, the guarded relic, the delayed barley, the old ford, the restless animals, the fears nobody admits too loudly once the sun is up. And as the clerk's quill scratches on, you understand that the medieval town does not leave the night behind. It carries it into morning, names it, measures it, finds it 2 eggs, and writes it down in ink. The manor court thins slowly, as all gatherings do when people have finished speaking but not quite finished feeling injured. The steward rolls his parchment with a practiced snap, the clerk wipes his quill, and the suspicious monk departs with the air of a man who has successfully defended both leeks and civilization. The widow takes back her wandering chicken, now fined 2 eggs, and apparently proud of itself. The carter stands near the cracked wheel, speaking in low tones with the wheelwright, while the baker watches them both as if he can already hear tomorrow's loaves growing smaller. You remain near the wall for a while, letting the hall empty around you. Rushes crunch under departing boots. The dog keeps his head on your foot, unwilling to rise unless the chicken makes another appearance. Morning light has strengthened, but it is still soft, filtered through cloud and narrow windows, falling in pale bars across the floor. Smoke from the hearth curls upward into the soot-black rafters and disappears there, joining years of old fires, old suppers, old oaths, and old complaints nobody has the energy to settle anymore. A servant begins gathering cups from the benches. Another shakes out a wool cloak near the fire, and droplets patter onto the stones. The smell of wet wool rises, thick and familiar, bringing back the town gate at dusk, the inn doorway, the watchman's lane, the monastery yard in rain. You feel as though the whole night has folded itself into that one smell: damp cloth, cold hands, smoke, bread, river mist, horse breath, and beeswax. You stand at last and follow the warmth toward a smaller side chamber off the hall, where a low fire burns in a hearth built into the wall. It is not a grand hearth, not the roaring mouth of a lord's feast, but a modest bed of coals and split wood, enough to dry sleeves, soften fingers, and persuade tired bones that the world may yet be bearable. A half-burned candle rests in an iron holder on the table nearby, its wax slumped over one side in a shape you remember from the inn. Perhaps every candle, if left alone long enough, begins to resemble a weary traveller leaning against a wall. The dog circles once before the fire, then twice, then lies down with a sigh so complete it seems to close an entire chapter of his life. His paws twitch, his ears relax. He has followed you through gate, inn, alehouse, stable, market, monastery, riverbank, bakehouse, shrine, frostfield, keep, and court, and has contributed mostly appetite and moral support. In a medieval town, that is nearly a profession. You sit on a low stool beside him. Your cloak hangs from a peg, steaming gently. Your boots rest near the hearth, dark with dried and drying mud. A servant leaves a small wooden cup of warmed ale on the table, spiced faintly with something sharp and green. Perhaps sage, perhaps costmary, perhaps whatever the cook found and trusted. Warm ale is given for chill, weariness, sorrow, poor sleep, and any complaint too vague to deserve a more expensive remedy. No one can quite agree whether it cures the body or merely convinces the body to stop arguing. You drink, and for now, that is enough. Outside the chamber, the keep continues its day. You hear bowls being stacked, a door bar lifted, a horse led across the yard, the wheelwright testing the cracked spoke with his thumb. From farther below comes the town market voices beginning, a bell calling, a cart rattling, someone laughing at something not quite kind. The sounds are no longer midnight sounds, yet you recognize them. Each has changed clothes for morning. The watchman's staff has become the steward's tapping finger. The stable breath has become harness and hoof. The river's knock has become buckets and washerwomen's complaints. The bakehouse thump has become bread on trenchers. The monastery quill has become the clerk's record of fines and fences. The market ropes have become awnings lifting into daylight. The forest cry has become a tale that will be retold by supper, larger or smaller depending on who has the cup. Some swear that sounds heard near midnight carry farther into the next day than any spoken promise. Others say this is only because tired people remember odd things. Even now, it is hard to tell. Yet as you sit by the fire, you feel the truth of it in your hands. The night has left traces everywhere, soot on your sleeve, mud on your boots, flour in the fold of your cloak, a river chill at the edge of your thoughts, and a dog asleep against your ankle, as if he has always belonged there. His servant girl enters to turn the cloak on its peg so the other side may dry. She works quietly, with the efficiency of someone who has learned that warmth must be shared in order, lord, household, guest, garment, and then, perhaps, fingers. A little ring of blue thread circles her wrist, much like the stable boy's. You notice it, and she notices you noticing it. For aches, she says. You nod. It may be for aches, it may be for luck. It may be because someone who loved her tied it there before dawn and said it would help. In this world, such distinctions are not always useful. A charm is sometimes medicine for the heart, and the heart, like any other household object, needs mending before it cracks. The half-burned candle gives a small hiss. A drop of wax slides, falls, and hardens almost at once on the iron base. The sound is tiny, almost nothing, yet after all you have heard, you hear it clearly wax, ember, breath, wool, ash. The forgotten sounds have grown smaller now, not because they matter less, but because you have come close enough to rest. You lean back against the wall. The stone is still cool, but no longer cruel. The fire works slowly through the room. The dog sleeps, the cloak dries, the town speaks beyond the door in its waking voice. But you no longer need to follow every note. You have walked through its hidden hours and listened while it revealed itself, not as a place of silence, but as a great breathing body of timber, mud, bells, bread, animals, prayers, fears, work, and sleep. And now the morning allows you to be still. The fire lowers itself into a red, steady glow. The chamber becomes quiet enough that you can hear your own breathing fall into rhythm with the dog's. Outside, footsteps pass and fade. A bell rings once, softer now, not summoning you anywhere, only marking that time continues its slow road over roof and field. The wet wool near the hearth no longer smells sharp. It smells warm, heavy, and safe. The candle flame bends, straightens, and rests. You let your hands loosen in your lap. The night's road grows gentle behind your eyes. The gatehouse stands in dusk, but far away now. The inn rafters creak, but only like old wood turning in sleep. The alehouse song becomes a murmur beneath blankets. The watchman's bell becomes a small bright bead of sound, carried safely in the dark. The stable horses breathe clouds into straw, and the broken wheel no longer troubles you. It waits for daylight hands. It will be mended or replaced, or argued over until everyone is too tired to continue, and the town will go on. The market square lies open beneath pale morning. its stones drying slowly. The monastery bell rests in its tower. The guarded relic remains behind its oak door, believed, doubted, protected, and perhaps that is enough. The scribes keep their patient letters. The river slides under mist, carrying frogs, ropes, barges, and rumours toward places you need not reach tonight. The bakers shape another loaf. The pilgrims walk beyond the fields, their badges touching softly with every step. The forest keeps its old shadow at the edge of the furrows, but dawn has laid a quiet hand across it. You're here, beside the fire. There is nothing more you must solve. No toll to pay, no bell to answer, no court to attend, no road to take before you are ready. The medieval town settles around you like a wool blanket, rough in places, smoky in places, but warm enough when drawn close. The dog sighs, deep and trusting. The ember shifts. The candle grows shorter. Somewhere, someone closes a door gently, and the sound is not an ending, only a soft covering laid over the day. So you breathe in slowly, smoke, wool, bread, beeswax, rain. You breathe out. The stones hold their warmth. The rafters hold their shadows. The town holds its 1,000 small sounds, but they drift farther and farther away until they are only a hush beyond the firelight. Your eyes grow heavy, your shoulders soften. The last glow of the hearth blurs into a warm red star, low and kind, and the old world around you becomes dim, safe and still.